The Bay just lit the fuse on a move built for May and June, a move that reshapes how Stephen Curry is defended, how our second unit survived the minutes without him, and how this team leans into skill over brute force when the game slows and every possession is a cliff's edge. Lean in, because I'm about to show you step by step why the front office finally pushed its chips forward around a targeted, surgical scoring bet, why the conversations that started quietly weeks ago accelerated after a single deadline pass, and why the window to strike is now not in February and definitely not next summer. If you're a Warriors fan who wants the real calculus, the cap logic, the rotation ripple effects, the late-game play calls, the defensive trade-offs, and the championship math behind it all, this is your video from the inside out, with zero fluff and all the context the national shows won't give you. I'm taking you from the state of the roster and our scoring gaps, through the mechanics of matching salary and preserving picks, to how a specific guard's gravity next to Steph and Jimmy Butler becomes the hinge on which this whole season can swing. And yes, I'll get to the name and the offer, but not before we earn it with the why, because what we're about to discuss is the kind of decision that separates real contenders from loud pretenders. And the moment it clicks, you'll feel exactly why the Bay was always the right ecosystem for this kind of scorer, and why the timing post-deadline culture reset, a veteran front line, and an offense begging for a second downhill creator who can screen, slip, relocate, then curl right back into a pull-up could not be better for a run that matters. I start with the reality check. This roster has toughness, experience, and IQ, but it needed another gear of self-creation without compromising spacing. Buddy Hield's movement shooting stretches the floor. Al Horford's short roll passing gives Steve Kerr a new DHO hub, and Jimmy Butler's two-way edge changes our baseline intensity. But the recurring pain point last spring and in too, many late clock possessions was simple when teams top lock Steph and send nail help at every split action. We required a guard who can punish a bent defense off the catch and off the dribble, who willingly screens for Steph to invert actions, then instantly turns the switch into a mismatch without stalling the offense. That profile isn't a theoretical wish list. It's a live target because the marketplace just opened a narrow door, an elite guard with all-star credentials and 3-level scoring, whose extension window closed without a deal, who is rehabbing on a short timeline, and whose team already reshaped at the top. Maybe tempted to sell at a number that's still expensive, but finally rational for a contender. That's all in on the next 24 months. That's the hinge moment that front offices wait on, and the Warriors were prepared. You asked for specifics. So here's the detail that matters without burying you in CBA legalese. The target earns a clean mid-30s number this season with one more season to run, which means Golden State can build a compliant package around an established salary plus one blue-chip young piece, supplemented by draft capital space to respect the Stepien constraints while still preserving a future bullet. Practically, that means you can center the money with Buddy Hield, layer in Jonathan Kuminga, whose value around the league remains strong after last year's scoring jump and his new short-term deal that teams actually like because it keeps long-term flexibility, and then attach first stagger to avoid consecutive future draft gaps. There's nuance in swap language and protections, but the skeleton fits. Outgoing shooting for the cap math, a premium athlete for the upside Miami wants, and picks that keep our distant future intact while maximizing Curry's present. This is not a thought experiment. This is the actual outline of the offer structure that's been floated in league circles. A framework that took on urgency the moment the extension clock struck midnight and the guard stayed on his current deal, turning the next few months into an audition for value. Now, rotation and scheme, because this is where you feel it on court. Picture the first action after a dead ball Horford lifts to the elbow. Steph sets a ghost screen for our new guard. Butler camps weak side dunker to tag the tagger. Draymond is ready to short roll if the blitz comes. If the defense switches, our guard is comfortable punishing size from the mid-post or dragging the big into a pull-up three. If they stay at the level, Steph slips, catching on the move, and our guards release valve threes turn a scramble into scoreboard pressure. The second unit minutes finally stop bleeding because you stagger. One of Steph, or the new guard anchors every possession. Whiff. Healed, if kept, or Moses Moody spacing and Horford running Chicago action to free a handoff into an immediate rise-up. The math shifts teams can't load two to the ball on Steph and live with the kick-out anymore. Because the kick-out is now a live dribble into a pull-up or a lane touch that forces a third defender to commit. The effect is cumulative, not just in points, but in how fresh Steph is in the fourth, how much cleaner Butler's matchups become, and how often Draymond is screening for advantage rather than for survival. There's a storyline you'll hear about defense, and it's fair to ask if adding a score-first guard dilutes the switching identity. But watch the film with clear eyes, the new guard competes, is well-schooled in a demanding system, and more importantly, he will be insulated by scheme and personnel in this context. Butler and Draymond still take the toughest wings. Steph's positioning and hands remain elite in our shell, and the staff can lean on Horford's communication to tidy up coverages. The trade-off is one you accept because the net rating swing from reliable shot creation far outweighs a marginal dip in point of attack contained, especially when your rotations are locked and your defensive rebounding is structurally sound. And frankly, we've been living in the world where opponents dared our non-Steph guards to beat single coverage. This flips that dare back on them. Timing matters. 2. Our guard target had ankle surgery with an 8 to 12 week outlook, which paradoxically becomes an opportunity buying low relative to peak hype, but in time to fold him in before the season's middle third. So by Christmas, you've seen several lineup packages, and by March, your closing five has habits baked in. The medicals on this kind of procedure are well understood, and the player himself has never lacked for conditioning or work rate. You're not betting on a miracle. You're betting on calendar and fit. And because the extension didn't get done, the leverage shifts. His incumbent team risks losing optionality in 2026 if they wait too long. While we can take on the risk precisely because our ecosystem amplifies his strengths on day one. Let's come up for air and talk identity. This group already has a clear personality, Steph's gravity and joy, Draymond's edge, Butler's ruthless simplicity, Horford's composure. What it needed was another scorer who can blend rather than monopolize, who understands pace changes, who is comfortable being a screener in one possession and the release valve in the next, who can thrive in our read and react. A fence without turning it into 5-out isolation. Here's what I've seen studying his best stretches. He hunts the empty corner with patience. He loves the right wing pull-up three in transition. He'll sneak into a slot cut after giving up the ball, and he has just enough pace in the mid-range to force a late contest. Next to Steph, those micro skills become macro advantages because the attention is always tilted toward no 30. With Butler on the floor, our target's job simplifies even more. Punish single coverage, sprint to the corner in our 21 series sets, and be ready to screen for Jimmy when teams put their worst defender on him to survive. The beauty of Kerr's late-game menu is that it can feature two ball handlers without becoming predictable. And this guard's willingness to play without the ball is the tell that he'll fit immediately. Now the money question. Is it worth sending out a beloved young piece and picks for a guard whose defense is league average and whose best skill we ostensibly already have? The answer is in playoff math. Redundancy and advantages is not duplication, it's pressure. The Celtics didn't win because they had one shooter. Denver doesn't suffocate you because Jokic is the only passer. You beat elite, switching playoff defenses by presenting them with too many point-of-attack threats to load up on any single one. If Steph has a co-pilot who is a credible 25-point scorer and a fearless fourth-quarter shot maker, our offense keeps its motion identity while gaining something we've too often lacked since 2019, the right to win ugly when the pace dies and your first action is blown up. Add the intangible layer this guard's shot-making swag, the three-point contest aura. The way arenas feel him heat up and you've got a Bay Area crowd that becomes a weapon again in close games. And a road game antidote when momentum turns. I also want to address the culture fit, because that's not fluff here. The notion that he reunite with Jimmy Butler, but in our colors, under our standards matters. Jimmy leads with accountability and late-game clarity, and this guard has already proven he can take heat from a star, respond, and still make big shots in big months. Now translate that into a locker room where Steph is the tone, Draymond is the thermostat, and Kerr's staff knows how to coach shooters without overcoaching them. The expectation is not that he becomes a savior Steph doesn't need one. The expectation is that he becomes a multiplier, a stress test for every coverage, and a daily competitor who absorbs the urgency of being on the clock with champions. If you're worried about touches, remember, the ball finds energy in the system, and few players in the league move with more scoring intent after the pass than this one. The fit is basketball, not brand. All right, context earned. Here's the heart of it. Golden State has moved from due diligence to action, advancing a formal framework to acquire Tyler Herro from Miami built around Buddy Hield. Jonathan Kuminga and multiple first-rounders staggered to preserve future flexibility, with contingency pathways that loop in a minor piece for matching if needed. The Heat's calculus shifted when Herro's early extension window closed without an agreement, and his ankle timeline set his return for mid-season. That doesn't make a deal inevitable, but it makes it real, live, and frankly, aligned with both teams' arcs right now. For the Warriors, it plugs the exact defensive hole we've been trying to fill by committee. For the Heat, it resets around a dynamic wing athlete and draft capital while they retool post-Butler. And yes, before you ask, the medicals, the tax aprons, and the pick rules have all been mapped. This is not a fantasy jersey swap. It's a negotiation with teeth and a decision point measured in weeks, not months. Take a breath and feel what that means on the floor the first night. He's cleared. Steph draws the top lock and the stunt from the nail. Draymond flips the screen angle. Tyler slips, catches. One dribble, 14 on the clock, and your blood pressure drops because that's a good shot from a good shooter in rhythm. Shift to late game. Butler at the nail as a decoy. Steph stacks a screen into a rescreen. Herro lifts from the corner. The closeout is hot. Two hard bounces to the elbow. Rise string music. The defense has to choose a poison now, and for the first time in a long time. They can't put two on Steph without paying cash on the weak side every time. Could it backfire? Sure. Any big swing can. But the risk is targeted, and the upside is exactly what wins in April. You manufacture good half-court shots when everyone knows what's coming. I know Warriors fans are already putting names into trade machines and arguing over the sticker price. Here's my read as a fan who lives this, and as someone who's watched this front office for a decade. When the core is aligned in window and identity, you buy certainty in the skill that scales in the playoffs. Herro's shot diet, especially the off-the-catch threes, the quick pull-ups, the floater at 6 to 8 feet, plays in any gym in any series. And his presence simplifies the game for veterans who don't need more usage, just cleaner touches. That's the quiet value Draymond's assists tick up. Steph's turnovers dip in the fourth. Butler's drives become more selective. Horford's DHOs produce more downhill touches than spinbacks. The whole machine hums. Before I close, I want to hear you. Do you want the front office to lock this in now, pay the price, and settle the rotation? Or ride the first quarter of the season and risk the price rising once he returns and the rest of the league starts bidding? Drop your take below. Tell me if you keep Kuminga out of it no matter what, or if you believe the pairing with Steph and Jimmy is exactly the playoff pressure we've been missing. I'll be in the comments with you. My final view, concise and direct. The Warriors are acting from a position of clarity, not panic. They know who they are. They know where the scoring gaps are. And they've finally found a path to fill them with a guard who can scale next to greatness without needing to steal oxygen. If the Heat accept the package on the table, Tyler Herro lands in the Bay to become the most dynamic scoring partner Steph has had since 2019. If they balk, the Bay still wins from forcing the market to define a price now, not later. Either way, this is smart, aggressive roster building in a tight window. If you value this kind of inside-out breakdown, tap subscribe. Hit the like so the algorithm knows the Bay still talks real hoop. And keep your alerts on when the next domino falls. You'll get the full on-court breakdown, the cap update, and the first look at how Kerr will script the opening sets with a new scorer in our backcourt.